My name is Bridget Wagoner. I am the Director of Educational Services for the Waverly-Shell Rock School District. We are in northeast Iowa, just a little bit north of Waterloo-Cedar Falls. For the most part, we're a suburban district. We have a little bit of a rural population in our district as well. Size of our district is about 2,000 students.
In what way has your district incorporated a standards-based system?
Okay, so currently we are standards-based from kindergarten through 8th grade. We have some teachers at the high school level who are exploring standards-based, in departments or individual PLCs, but nothing very widespread there right now. Although I think we all recognize that we're going to have to roll this up into the high school level as well. And it looks a little bit different at different levels. So K6 uses just straight standards, nothing else. Grade 7 and 8 use sort of a hybrid system where they report standards, but they also report a percentage. Not typically translated into a letter grade though, although I'm sure every parent translates that into a letter grade. The way we rolled that or scaled that was that we had a few grade levels of teachers who were interested in trying standards-based. It actually was kindergarten and 5th and 6th grade. And so we gave them the green light to figure it out. We kind of experimented with them, played around in our student information system with those smaller groups to figure out what would work and what wouldn't work. And then the following year, actually scaled it to all teachers in all classrooms K-8.
Okay, thank you. And so in your opinion, how has this benefited student achievement?
It's a tough question to answer. I think the sort of the gold standard for answering that question would be able to say, okay, we have this baseline data that we can now compare, before and after. I'm not sure that's the case. And I think part of the reason that that's not the case is because many of the things that we were using to measure student achievement before standards-based were not as precise as they are right now. What I can tell you today is that I'm confident we have a much more clear idea of what our kids are and are not learning, and that because of that much clearer picture, we have a much greater sense of urgency about finding and using interventions that will be successful with kids to make sure that all of our kids are learning. We have to make some assumptions about the impact that has overall. We're a high achieving district, probably always will be, got that zip code effect going. Great kids, great supportive community, great teachers. But the impact in terms of actual learning that standards-based has had, it really has to do with being much more precise and specific, and then really being transparent, I think, about where an individual student is, which has then really forced us to get honest about where our kids are and what we need to do differently.
Okay, thank you. Some of the documents that we have a part of this professional development module come from the Colorado Coalition for Standards-Based Education, and I know you've reviewed the document before this interview. So what do you think the most important conditions in a school or district are that help effectively implement a standards-based system?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it is sort of chicken egg. I spent a lot of time thinking about, okay, what has to happen first, or what has to be in place before, and then what happens as a result of. I would absolutely contend that going down the path of standards-based will open the door to every conversation you need to have. I mean, because the work makes so many things very, very clear and very much in your face. And so it forces you to have conversations that that really get into all of these different conditions. One thing if I'd have to nail it down to one thing that I think really was foundational for us, it probably has to do with curriculum. And I've sort of made a transformation in my own thinking and my own position on the idea of common standards as we've gone through this journey. And I used to very much be an advocate of local control and locally designed standards and flexibility. But what I've learned, I think, as we go through this process is that adopting some standards, really takes that debate off the table. I don't think any of us could argue that we have a comprehensive list of all of the things that kids need to know and be able to do when they graduate. But at least agreeing on a set of standards takes that debate off the table. And I think for years, all of our time and energy, maybe not all, but a huge amount of our time and energy was spent in that argument of what should kids learn. And when we finally got to the point where we said, okay, this is what kids are going to learn, we were able to take the next step. And I would even go a little bit deeper in that curriculum conversation and say that what was really important for us is to move past the idea of alignment, where it's look at what we do, let's look at this unit or this project, and then let's attach all of the standards to it. I make the analogy that it's like this little standards potluck where we have this little unit that we do and then we invite all the standards to participate. But to really walk away from that, and for us it became a focus on, here's the learning, now what's the very best way to teach that, to assess it, to ensure the kids learn it. And that process of enacting those standards is what really, I think, made the difference for us. And then it sort of sounds like a simple step, but when we actually put those standards on the report card or in Infinite Campus so that that's what parents saw, we saw a huge shift happen in, I think, in the level of ownership that our teachers had. I remember very clearly hearing one of our first grade teachers, who's an excellent teacher and always has been an excellent teacher, say, I've always felt accountable for what I teach, but right now I feel really accountable for what my kids learn. And that was a huge shift that we didn't even purposefully make, but it happened when we made the learning so prominent and so clearly communicated.
Okay, thank you. And so from those list of conditions, is there one or are there a few that you've identified that you'll be working toward in the future?
Yeah, we're kind of working on a lot of them, but I think the two that really become most important for us right now have to do with, number one, assessment. I think the more we journey down this path, the more invested our teachers are in finding assessments that they can believe in, that they can get behind. We constantly struggle with the idea of, what is the best way to know where my kids are, and how can I do that in a way that is efficient but yet not, that it doesn't take the personalized sort of human interaction away from teaching. And so I just sent out our needs assessment for professional development for next year, and I got a lot of responses back from teachers about, I want to learn more about high quality assessment practices. I want to know what's out there that I can use better. It has really forced us to take a look at what we believed was a high quality curriculum, and honestly probably still is. But when you come out of the end of a unit or out of the end of an activity and you still have kids who haven't gotten where you want them to go, it forces you to have some conversations about what you've been doing. And I think the other thing that we really need to dig in is the idea of instruction. I think the benefit in Iowa is that we've got the characteristics of effective instruction. I think a lot of districts, my own included, have kind of left those off to the side because they're a little bit messy. They're really complex. They force teachers and administrators to identify that probably a lot of what we do doesn't match what we should be doing. But the balance that we found, it's relatively easy to put your standards on a report card, to require teachers to attach those standards to all of their lessons and units and assessments. But what we've had a much more difficult time of doing is trying to contain the broader picture, to communicate the broader picture. And so I think that really digging into effective instruction is going to help us do that. We like to be in a situation where we have a list of things that we can check off and that seem pretty neat. But when we have to get honest about, but are our kids really thinking deeply? Do they really have a sense of agency and engagement in their own learning? Are we really dealing at a deep level with the most important things? That's a lot messier, and it's where we definitely need to be moving next.
Okay, thank you. And so you've shared a lot of wonderful words of wisdom today. Is there any other advice that you would like to share with educational leaders around the state of Iowa who are thinking about standards-based or in the middle of implementing a standards-based system?
I think it's probably the same advice I give everybody about everything, which is, you can't let perfect get in the way of doing anything. You have to just do it. It is busy. It's a lot of work, but we're never going to have everything figured out before we jump in. And I definitely think the time is right now to begin. If you haven't started yet, to dig in now and do it. There's a growing understanding. There are enough districts that have sort of opened the conversation and the controversy that it's worth doing right now. But I think this is our 4th year, and all 4 years we've made relatively significant changes to what we've done. But when I reflect on it, I'm not sure that I would have started it in any different way. It really is just about making a decision to go and then going with it and being able to reflect along the way and make changes. And then the other piece of advice I have that I'm not sure that I've really figured out myself, but really that caution of being sure that we don't lose something, lose the bigger idea of what we do, that we are really, our purpose here is to educate kids, who are students and that whole child sort of aspect, that we don't lose the fact that kids need to be excited and they need to have fun, and that these are about human interactions when we try to distill everything that we do into a list of learning, and then try to make that learning as objective and finite as we possibly can. I think we struggle sometimes with the balance of recognizing that we value a lot more than what's on this list, but we recognize that if we're not doing what's on this list, then we really are not educating our kids in a way that we need to be doing.
Well, I agree. Thank you so much for your time
Oh, you're
today.
welcome.